श्रीवासादि गौरव भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। सर्वशास्त्रादि पीयूष, सर्ववेदिक सत्फल, सर्वसिद्धांत रत्नाख्य, सर्वलौकिक तत्पद, सर्वभागवत प्राण श्रीमद्भागवत प्रभो हरिध्वांतु दिदादित्य श्री कृष्ण परिवर्तिता परमानंद पाठाय प्रेमवशक्षरायते सर्वदा सर्वसेव्या श्री कृष्णाय नमस्तुमे। मदेक बंधो मत्संगी मद्गुरो मन्महाधन मन्निस्तारक मद्भाग्य मदानंद नमस्तुते। असाधु साधुदादाय नदीचोच्चताकर आनमुच्च कदाचिन् मां करुणाहृत्कण्ठयोस्फुर। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Okay, today 2.1.18 to 2.1.26. Okay, 18. नियच्छद् विषयेभ्योक्षान् मनसा बुद्धिसारथिः मनः कर्मभिराक्षिप्तं शुभार्थे धारयेद् धिया। Gradually, as the mind becomes progressively spiritualized, withdraw it from sense activities, and by intelligence, the senses will be controlled. The mind, too absorbed in material activities, can be engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead and become fixed in full transcendental consciousness. Shubharthe Bhagavati. See here, Shubharthe literally means in an auspicious object of meditation. So, literally, this verse would mean the mind, too absorbed in material activities, should be fully fixed in an auspicious object. But that auspicious object is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. That is accepted by all the later commentators also. Pratyahara Maha. This is another step in Ashtanga Yoga practice, to withdraw the senses from the sense objects. And by intelligence, the senses will be controlled. The fixed, resolute determination to attain the ultimate goal of spiritual perfection is considered to be uh, a charioteer. So the first half of the verse talks about pratyahara. The second half talks about dharana, dharana maha. Punascha karmabhis tad vasanabhir akshipte makrishtam. When the mind becomes overcome by material activities, that means it is overcome by the desires for material activities, then it should be fixed in the auspicious object. The auspicious object is nothing but the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. Karmabhir akshiptam. Being absorbed in material activities. What does this refer to? Prachina karmanam ati, no, ati प्राबल्या, प्राणायामैरपि सम्यक् निश्चलीकर्तुम् अशक्यम् इति अर्थः. The mind is overcome by karma because of the extreme force of one's previous karmic reactions. See, the previous karmic reactions carry with them the desires to engage in those activities, the vasana. So the mind, to make it completely unshaken, is not possible until a certain point, until one actually fixes himself in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now we should note that uh, all the good qualities of the karma system exist in the higher systems. We have Vairagya, Vidya, and Bhakti. Elements of Vairagya, elements of Vidya, elements of Bhakti in the karma system, Jnana system, Yoga system, and Bhakti system. And each of the higher systems will contain more of these elements. So everything that is meant to be given up at a particular, on a particular platform, on the platform of karma, that continues in Jnana, Yoga, and Bhakti. So whatever is rejected in karma is automatically rejected in Jnana, and Yoga, and Bhakti. Whatever is rejected in Jnana is automatically rejected in Yoga and Bhakti. Whatever is rejected in Yoga is automatically rejected in Bhakti also. Plus Bhakti rejects further things. So it is supreme in terms of three parameters: Vairagya, Vidya, and Bhakti. In all three parameters, Bhakti is supreme. So when we are moving towards Ananya Bhakti, externally and internally, we should remember this. For instance, this item called Pratyahara. Pratyahara Maha. Okay. Pratyahara, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, is one of the two components of the practice of bhakti. One component he calls it Paranushīlanam, to be absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Krishnanushīlanam. Through thinking, feeling, willing. But the other part of it is Pratyahara. Pratyahara, he says, is the other half of it, to withdraw the mind from the external world. And that is very, very important. In Bhakti Yoga also, it is very, very important that we do this. It is a war. It is a war on the body and the mind and the intelligence, on false ego and so on. But we must progress in this war in order to win over. It is very important to win over also. The first process of, and it applies obviously in Ashtanga Yoga. The first process of spiritualizing the mind by mechanical chanting of the Pranava Omkara and by control of the breathing system is technically called the mystic or yogic process of pranayama, or fully controlling the breathing air. The ultimate state of this pranayama system is to be fixed in trance, technically called samadhi, but experience has proven that even the samadhi stage also fails to control the materially absorbed mind. For example, the great mystic Vishwamitra Muni, even in the stage of samadhi, became a victim of the senses and cohabited with Menaka. History has already recorded this. The mind, although ceasing to think of sensual activities at present, remembers past sensual activities from the subconscious status. And this disturbs one from 100% engagement in self-realization. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami recommends the next step of assured policy, namely to fix one's mind in the service of the personality of Godhead. Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, also recommends this direct process in the Bhagavad Gita 6.47. It is also noted in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita also. Tani sarvani samyami yukta asita matpara. Unless one fixes one's mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot actually make progress. Whatever status he may be, whether he's in the status of karma, or jnana, or yoga, or bhakti, everywhere you require that absorption in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, the mind being spiritually cleansed, one should at once engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord by the different devotional activities of hearing, chanting, etc. If performed under proper guidance, that is a surest path of progress, even for the disturbed mind. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given some hints about how this should be executed. He says, Like, for instance, in the process of chanting, we should note down how much we are chanting so that we can increase it. In that way, systematically, one should recover one's spiritual health. It's like a sick person is given a regulated treatment and a prescribed diet, and everything is very much quantified. And that is very, very important. Same way, the engagement in Maya also is meant to be measured and quantified. Even the non-devotees, they know the importance of these things. Measure what matters. These are principles that even really passionate, accomplished materialists, they follow. Very important. These things are um, carefully done, carefully dealt with. In which book, Thakur is mentioning about this in Bhagavatarga Marichi Mala. We will see this. Achyutanam Prabhu. He has also mentioned it in other places in his articles in Sajantoshni. One article also he says this. That is why he recommended Namashriya Bhakti. Achyutanam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhuji, one of our devotees asked me that where is the reference for this yoga ladder, or when we say a karma yogi, when he matures, he becomes a jnana yogi, and then dhyana yogi, and then finally he comes to bhakti yogi. He was asking for a scriptural reference for this, and I could not give him. Like he was asking where in Gita it is written that a karma yogi will become jnana yogi, or a jnana yogi will become bhakti yogi, dhyana yogi.
You look at chapter 6 itself from third chapter to sixth chapter. That is why all these commentators are saying this. First of all, the practice has to have a high density of karma, then a high density of jnana, then a high density of yoga, and it culminates in a high density of bhakti. Just examine the verses from third chapter of Bhagavad Gita to sixth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and then it will be plain. There's no controversy between about this amongst the different acharyas, amongst the different Vaishnava acharyas. You don't find any controversy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very plain and obvious. And if you look at Bhagavatam 11th canto Uddhava Gita, it becomes even more clear.
Okay, bro.
19. Tatreka yavam dhyaye avyuchinena chetasa manonirvishya yam yukva tatah kinchana nasmare padam tat paramam vishnur manoyatra prasidati. Thereafter, you should meditate upon the limbs of Vishnu, one after another, without being deviated from the conception of the complete body. Thus, the mind becomes free from all sense objects. There should be no other thing to be thought upon. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is the ultimate truth, the mind becomes completely reconciled in Him only. Sheyabhya nirgatya tatraiva mano yunktva anyat na smaret. One should withdraw the mind from the sense objects, fix the mind on Lord Vishnu, and not think about anything else. Dhyana. This is the platform of dhyana. Ekam ekam padadyavayavam. one should meditate on the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu and then proceed higher and higher and higher. This is the proper process of Ashtanga Yoga. Like there is a proper process of Jnana Yoga, which is personalistic. It's meditation on, it is cultivating knowledge, understanding, realization of Bhagavan. So like that, this is a proper engagement of yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. Samadhi Maha, Nirvishayam Mano Yutva Samadhaya. Okay, from here, from Mano Nirvishayam, it's a description of Samadhi. Tadeva Vishnu Bhagavata Padam Swarupam Brahma iti arthaha. This is the spiritual nature of Bhagavan Vishnu. The mind becomes tranquil, peaceful, only when one comes to this point. This is the 8th stage. Foolish persons, bewildered by the external energy of Vishnu, do not know that the ultimate goal of the progressive search after happiness is to get in touch directly with Lord Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. Nate vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnu. Vishnu Tattva is an unlimited expansion of different transcendental forms of the personality of Godhead, and the supreme or original form of Vishnu Tattva is Govinda or Lord Krishna, the supreme cause of all causes. Therefore, thinking of Vishnu or meditating upon the transcendental form of Vishnu, specifically upon Lord Krishna, is the last word on the subject of meditation. This meditation may be begun from the lotus feet of the Lord. One should not, however, forget or be misled from the complete form of the Lord. Thus, one should practice thinking of the different parts of his transcendental body one after another. Here in this verse, it is definitely assured that the Supreme Lord is not impersonal. He is a person, but his body is different from the bodies of conditioned persons like us. Otherwise, meditation beginning from the Pranava Omkara up to the limbs of the personal body of Vishnu would not have been recommended by Shukadeva Goswami for the attainment of complete spiritual perfection. The Vishnu forms of worship in great temples of India are not therefore arrangements of idol worship as they are wrongly interpreted to be by a class of men with a poor fund of knowledge. Rather, they are different spiritual centers of meditation on the transcendental limbs of the body of Vishnu. The worshipable deity in the temple of Vishnu is identical with Lord Vishnu by the inconceivable potency of the Lord. Therefore, a neophyte's concentration or meditation upon the limbs of Vishnu in the temple, as contemplated in the revealed scriptures, is an easy opportunity for meditation for persons who are unable to sit down tightly at one place and then concentrate upon Pranava Omkara or the limbs of the body of Vishnu as recommended here by Shukadeva Goswami, the great authority. The common man can benefit more by meditating on the form of Vishnu in the temple than on the Omkara, the spiritual combination of Akara, Ukara, Makara, the letters A, U, and Ma, as explained before. There is no difference between Omkara and the forms of Vishnu, but persons unacquainted with the science of the absolute truth try to create dissension, quarrel, by differentiating between them. Here it is indicated that the Vishnu form is the ultimate goal of meditation, and as such, it is better concentrate upon the forms of Vishnu than on the impersonal Omkara. The latter process is also more difficult than the former. We know that from Bhagavad Gita itself. Now, one thing is Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the teachers of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami, Suta Goswami, Vyasadeva, they assume that the reader has studied Bhagavad Gita. It is meant for an audience who has studied and obeyed Bhagavad Gita. That deity worship is so crucial. It's clear from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu itself. If you look at its description of sadhana bhakti, 64 items, out of 64 items, 6 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 items, Almost half of it deal with deity worship. Very important. He himself says that he has taken from the thousands of, he says lakshashaha, lakhs of different devotional activities presented in Haribhakti Vilas. From that he has selected 64. So that 64 are primary, they are principles. But everything that's presented in Haribhakti Vilas, they are details. These are principles. These are the most important elements. And within that, we can see how much important deity worship is. 20. Rajastamobhyam akshiptam vimudham mana atmanaha yakshe dharanaya dhiro hanti ya tatkritam malam. One's mind is always agitated by the passionate mode of material nature and bewildered by the ignorant mode of nature. But one can rectify such conceptions by the relation of Vishnu and thus become pacified by cleansing the material, the dirty things created by them. Gunavashat punaravikshophe sati dharanameva sthirikuryadityaha. If the mind becomes re-agitated under the control of the three modes of material nature, then one should fix oneself in dharana again. This is stated in the current verse. Yasa akshiptam tamasa vibhudha. The mind is overcome, agitated by Rajoguna and bewildered by Tamoguna. So one should restrain one's mind when it's in a situation like that. So one should pacify the mind by cleansing it from the contamination caused by Rajoguna and Tamoguna. Ativikshiptasya mudhachittasya tu sakshat Shri Bhagavati dharana na sampadyate. For the mind which is extremely agitated and which is bewildered, dharana or fixed meditation, fixed absorption, direct fixed absorption in the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not take place. Atas tasya vikshepa hetum tat sthula rupam prapanchayan tad dharanam yogabhyasa yatnena sampadayati raja ityadi. Therefore, the cause of that agitation that is being dealt with here. And therefore, dharana on the Supreme Personality of Godhead is presented through the endeavor, through a description of the endeavor for practice in Ashtanga Yoga. Persons generally conducted by the modes of passion and ignorance cannot be bona fide candidates for being situated in the transcendental stage of God realization. Only persons conducted by the mode of goodness can have the knowledge of the Supreme Truth. Effects of the modes of passion and ignorance are manifested by too much hankering after wealth and women. And those who are too much after wealth and women can rectify their leanings only by constant remembrance of Vishnu in his material potency, his impersonal feature. Generally, the impersonalists or monists are influenced by the modes of passion and ignorance. Such impersonalists think of themselves as liberated souls, but they have no knowledge of the transcendental personal feature of the absolute truth. Actually, they are impure in heart on account of being devoid of knowledge of the personal feature of the absolute. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that after many hundreds of births, the impersonal philosopher surrenders unto the personality of God. To acquire such a qualification of God realization in the personal feature, the neophyte impersonalist is given a chance to realize the relation of the Lord in everything by the philosophy of pantheism. Pantheism is the idea that the Supreme Lord himself is everything. So the idea is that for those who cannot take up the process that forces them to be entirely fixed in knowledge, understanding, and realizing Bhagavan, a step that is lower is presented. You take up that process by which you know, understand, and realize Paramatma. And if you cannot do that, then you take a step lower than that. You take up that process by which you can know, understand, and realize the qualitative oneness of the living entities with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is what we call impersonal Brahman realization. And then you proceed higher and higher and higher. Pantheism in its higher status does not permit the student to form an impersonal conception of the absolute truth, but it extends the conception of the absolute truth into the field of the so-called material energy. Everything created by the material energy can be dovetailed with the absolute by an attitude of service, which is an essential part of living energy. The pure devotee of the Lord knows the art of converting everything into a spiritual existence by the service attitude. And only in that devotional way can the theory of pantheism be perfected. So when we execute devotion service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead purely, then we realize that everything that we have in this world is an ingredient with which we can serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is one of the key teachings of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Ishavasyamidam sarvam. 21. Yasyam sandharya manayam yogino bhakti lakshana ashu sampadhyate yoga ashrayam bhadramikshataha. O King, by this system of remembrance and by being fixed in the habit of seeing the all-good personal conception of the Lord, one can very soon attain devotion service to the Lord under his direction. Bhadram ikshataha. And one, by being fixed in the habit of seeing the all-good. The all-good refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Hari. All auspicious means that he is the object of meditation and he himself is filled with bliss. So by seeing him, one attains happiness. Bhakti lakshanaha, purvokta dharanaji rupaha. So here bhakti is actually this process of being fixed in dharana and so on. Dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Samyama. In Ashtanga Yoga, these three are considered to be samyama. Technical expression for the higher three stages. Bhakti reva lakshanam chikhnam yasya saha. In other words, it's talking about a process where bhakti can be, the presence of bhakti can be understood. Bhakti mishrasya eva yogasya moksha sadhakarta uktaha natu bhakti rahitasya iti bhavaha. So the idea is that you have to execute bhakti with bhakti, you have to execute Ashtanga Yoga with bhakti, bhakti sahita yoga or bhakti mishra yoga, bhakti sahita yoga, not bhakti rahita yoga, not yoga that is devoid of engagement in the activities of bhakti. Yoginaha kidrishasya bhadram ashrayam bhagavantam ikshataha dharanaya ikshavanasya. Being fixed in the habit of seeing the all-good personal conception of the Lord means being fixed in the habit of seeing the all-good Supreme Personality of Godhead in the status of dharana and so on. Achyutanam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, when Srila Prabhupada is saying in purport to pacify the mind by constant remembrance of Lord Vishnu, so for this will translate as chanting constantly. Like if my mind is agitated.
No, not necessarily. Actually, one can, all the 64 items of sadhana bhakti are meant to be meditations on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Rupa Goswami mentions that in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. These are all different Chatushashti Upasana, different forms of meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Deity worship may fix one's mind. Reading scriptures on pure devotional service, that is one of the items that can fix one's mind. Chanting the holy names, that can fix one's mind. And there's so many different items. But the one that has been selected by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Yuga Dharma is Nama Kirtana. It is most applicable for Kali Yuga.
Okay, no.
Chanting the holy name, yes, that's there, but without offenses, and all these considerations are very much there. There's a process behind it.
So I was asking that if I am agitated now, so what is that one thing I should do at that very moment of agitation?
If nothing else works out, one should chant. In the association of more advanced devotees who are like-minded and who are affectionate, we should execute the sort of devotional service, that combination of devotional activities, which will fix our mind on Krishna. That is why it requires, Prabhupada keeps writing so many times, proper guidance. Of course, there are also situations where we know all these things. It is not that we do not know. We know all these things, and still we are repeatedly victimized, trapped. That indicates that we are not executing our Krishna conscious endeavors with the right, some element is missing. If you carefully examine Upadeshamrita 2 and 3, if all the elements are in place, then certainly we make progress. But if all the elements are not in place, then that means it's not an airtight engagement in Bhakti Yoga, which is what creates trouble. So therefore, we need to, this is all bhajana naipunya. This is all individual expertise in execution of bhajana kriya. Individually, we have to take up this. There is no autopilot mode. Individually, each and every one of us has to work it out. All these situations are presented by Lord Krishna through the external Maya potency in response to our own propensities, vasanas. That is why these things are coming, and also because of our past materialistic activities. So we have to learn to take up those activities by which we get out of material existence. To avoid, that's why that Paranushilana and Pratyahara, both of them have to be executed. Out of sight, out of mind is a gross level, not a guaranteed solution, but help. It is help. So Vedic culture itself presents it like that. See, bhakti is at the topmost level. Why? Why there is karma, there is jnana, there is yoga, and then bhakti? Why immediately Krishna does not speak bhakti in Bhagavad Gita also? Because bhakti has to be executed with a particular intensity. If it is not executed with a particular intensity, the effect is not seen. So therefore, for those who cannot execute just bhakti directly, then they are told, okay, you execute yoga and then come to that point of bhakti without losing any of the goodness of yoga. If you cannot do that, okay, you execute jnana. And without losing any of the goodness of jnana, you come to yoga. And without losing the goodness of any of the goodness of yoga, you come to bhakti. Everyone admits that at the ultimate point, we have to come to Kevala Bhakti. But if you cannot execute Kevala Bhakti immediately, then you do like this. If you cannot execute Jnana, then you have to execute Karma. Now there are, this is the general pathway. And this was applicable because 90% of the time, 90% of the time means before Kali Yuga. That is 90% of the time. The souls who are moving on the pathway of bhakti, they could execute this. In Kali Yuga, the problem is we are so tamasic, we are unable to even execute the different items of the karma system, what to speak of the jnana system or the yoga system. So therefore, under proper guidance only, one should learn to execute that process by which one comes to Kevala Bhakti at the earliest possible stage, as soon as possible. For that, we need to be, first of all, serious. And we need to, individually, we need to take it up as our personal challenge in life. Individual. And of course, then Krishna is there. Krishna's representatives are there. The spiritual masters are there. There are Vaishnava friends. Everything is there, but we should understand. This is a very, very important point. Very important. Very important. We should also help each other in this matter. Mohan Radhapati Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So, in the Yoga Mishra Bhakti, this is also included, the pantheism, what is there, like this meditation on the universal form. Is this included in Yoga Mishra Bhakti?
Yes, that is one way of executing Bhakti Mishra Yoga and then Yoga Mishra Bhakti also. We will see that. It's coming.
Okay.
Success of mystic performances is achieved only by the help of the devotional attitude. Pantheism, or the system of feeling the presence of the Almighty everywhere, is a sort of training of the mind to become accustomed to the devotional conception. And it is this devotional attitude of the mystic that makes possible the successful termination of such mystic attempts. One is not, however, elevated to such a successful status without mixing in a tinge of devotional service. The devotional atmosphere created by pantheistic vision develops into devotional service in later days, and that is the only benefit for the impersonalist. So impersonalism is accepted as a means sometimes, but never as a goal. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 12.5 that the impersonal way of self-realization is more troublesome because it reaches the goal in an indirect way, although the impersonalist also becomes obsessed with the personal feature of the Lord after a long time. 22. Rajovache. Yatha sandharyate brahman dharana yatra sammata yadrishi va hared ashu purushasya manomalam. The fortunate King Parikshit, inquiring further, said, "O Brahmana, please describe in full detail how and where the mind has to be applied and how the conception can be fixed so that the dirty things in a person's mind can be removed." Yat Shabda Prashne. Here, Yatra, Yadrishi. Yatra here actually means Putra, where Yadrishi here means Idrishi. They are used in the sense of questioning. Yachabdastu paramarshye prashnarthe cha abhibharniyate iti abhidane. The dictionary says that words like yatra, yadrishi can be used in interrogative sense. Yatha also. Ayamapi Raja Prashnaha Anyahitartha eva. This question of the king is for the benefit of others, not for his own benefit, because he is a practitioner of the bhakti system, the highest stage of spiritual practice. Rajovaचेति Bhakti Mishra Yoge Ragyah Jigyasa eva Natu Chikirsha. The king is only inquiring about Bhakti Mishra Yoga. He does not have a desire to execute Bhakti Mishra Yoga. Shukadeva Shishyasya Chudasya Abhimatayam Shuddha Bhakto Eva Pravritti Auchitya, because he's a disciple of Shukadeva Goswami. And therefore it's appropriate that he endeavors to execute Shuddha Bhakti, which is approved by Shukadeva Goswami. The dirty things in the heart of a conditioned soul are the root cause of all troubles for him. A conditioned soul is surrounded by the manifold miseries of material existence, but on account of his gross ignorance, is unable to remove the troubles due to dirty things in the heart accumulated during the long prison life in the material world. He's actually meant to serve the will of the Supreme Lord, but on account of the dirty things in the heart, he likes to serve his concocted desires. These desires, instead of giving him any peace of mind, create new problems and thus bind him to the cycle of repeated birth and death. These dirty things of fruitive work and empiric philosophy can be removed only by association with the Supreme Lord. That means by executing Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakhyam Atmanivedam. At least a tinge of it on a daily basis, while ensuring that we don't commit sinful activities or offenses. The Lord, being omnipotent, can offer his association by his inconceivable potencies. Thus, persons who are unable to pin their faith on the personal feature of the Absolute are given a chance to associate with his Virat Rupa, or the cosmic impersonal feature of the Lord. The cosmic impersonal feature of the Lord is a feature of his unlimited potencies. Since the potent and potencies are identical, even the conception of his impersonal cosmic feature helps the conditioned soul to associate with the Lord indirectly and thus gradually rise to the stage of personal contact. Maharaj Parikshit was already directly connected with the personal feature of the Lord Sri Krishna, and as such, he had no need to inquire from Shukadeva Goswami about where and how to apply the mind in the impersonal Virat Rupa of the Lord. But he inquired after a detailed description of the matter for the benefit of others who are unable to conceive of the transcendental personal feature of the Lord as a form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. The non-devotee class of men cannot think of the personal feature of the Lord because of their poor fund of knowledge. The personal form of the Lord, like Rama or Krishna, is completely revolting to them because they immediately think that this is also material. They have a poor estimation of the potency of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.11, it's explained by the Lord himself that people with a poor fund of knowledge deride the Supreme Personality of the Lord, taking him to be a common man. Such men are ignorant of the inconceivable potency of the Lord. By the inconceivable potency of the Lord, he can move in human society or any other society of living beings and yet remain the same omnipotent Lord without deviating in the slightest from his transcendental position. So, for the benefit of men who are unable to accept the Lord in his personal eternal form, Maharaj Parikshit inquired from Shukadeva Goswami how to fix the mind on him in the beginning, and the Goswami replied in detail as follows. 23. Shukavacha. Jitasano, Jitashwaso, Jitasango, Jitendriya, Stule Bhagavato Rupe, Manasandharaya Dhya. Shukadeva Goswami answered, one should control the sitting posture, regulate the breathing process by the yogic pranayama, and just control the mind and senses, and with intelligence apply the mind to the gross potencies of the Lord called the Virat Rupa. Yathetyasya uttaram jitasana iti. The answer to see, there were three different questions that were asked here. Yatha sandharyate. How is, what is that conception? What is his, what does he meditate on? What is that method? Dharana yatra sammata. What is the object of that? How exactly it is executed in such a manner that the mind becomes freed from contamination? These are specific questions. So the answer to the first question is stated here. Vishayamaha stula iti sardhena. What is the object of his meditation? That is stated in this verse and half of the next verse. Yatra sammata, jitasana, jitashwasa, jitasanga, jitendriya. The first half of this verse that specifies the answer to the first portion of text 22. In other words, it is talking about the preliminaries that must be executed. Dharanayatra sammata, that is the second question. That is answered here. पूर्वोक्तस्य अंतर्यामिणः चिद्घनस्वरूपे धारणायाम् असमर्थानाम् अशुद्धचित्तानां योगिनां रागद्वेषादि मालिन्य निवृत्त्यर्थं वैराजधारणमाह स्थूल इति. That is stated in the second half of this verse. The idea is that those who are unable to fix their minds on the concentrated spiritual form of the Paramatma, who is the inner ruler of all living beings in this world, who has been described, who has already been described, Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma. So, for those who are incapable of that, because their minds are contaminated, but they may still be executing the process of yoga. So for them, there is meditation on Vairaja, Virat Rupa, the universe itself as the body, extended body of the Supreme Lord. This is in order to remove the contamination of attachment, aversion, or love, hatred, and so on, pertaining to anything or anyone within material existence. The materially absorbed mind of the conditioned soul does not allow him to transcend the limit of the bodily conception of self, and thus the yoga system for meditation, controlling the sitting posture and breathing process, and fixing the mind upon the Supreme is prescribed in order to mold the character of the gross materialist. Unless such materialists are able to cleanse the materially absorbed mind, it is impossible for them to concentrate upon thoughts of transcendence. And to do so, one may fix one's mind on the gross material or external feature of the Lord. The different parts of the gigantic form of the Lord are described in the following verses. The materialistic men are very anxious to have some mystic powers as a result of such a controlling process. But the real purpose of yogic regulations is to eradicate the accumulated dirty things like lust, anger, avarice, and all such material contamination. If the mystic yogi is diverted by the accompanying feats of mystic control, then his mission of yogic success is a failure because the ultimate aim is God realization. He is therefore recommended to fix his gross materialistic mind by a different conception and thus realize the potency of the Lord. As soon as the potencies are understood to be instrumental manifestations of the transcendence, one automatically advances to the next step, and gradually the stage of full realization becomes possible for him. 24. Visheshastasya dehoyam sthavistascha sthaviyasam yatredam yajyate vishwam bhutam bhavyam bhavaccha sat. This gigantic manifestation of the phenomenal material world as a whole is the personal body of the absolute truth, wherein the universal resultant, past, present, and future of material time is experienced. Visheshaha Andakoshaha. This is talking about how the Supreme Lord is the super soul of one specific universe, one Brahmanda. Vishesho Virat Deha Atistulana api Sulataraha. Sthavishtascha Sthaviyasam. The gigantic manifestation of the phenomenal material world. It is more gross than the most gross items. Sat, Karya Matra. It is nothing but the effect of the process of creation. The whole idea is that from spirit, subtle matter is manifested, and from subtle matter, gross matter is manifested. Visheshaha, Samashtir Virat. It is the entirety of the universal form. Yatra idam drishyate, vyajyate, ityanena, drishya shravyadi vastumatranam, bhagavad vibhutitvad, bhagavad rupatvena dhyeyatve sati, spardha, asuya, adayaha, na kvapi bhaveihu iti. Okay, the whole idea is that when it is stated that everything here is experienced, vyajyate, or everything here is perceived. The idea is that every item in this world which can be seen, which can be heard, anything which is an object of sound, touch, form, taste, smell in this world is understood to be a vibhuti, an opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when it is meditated upon as a form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then at no point one will experience a competitive spirit of trying to lord it over, or a feeling of jealousy and so on. Ataha spardhadya bhave chitta shuddhi. Chitta shuddha ucha chit dhanatmaka shri narayana murto dharana ati sukara syad iti tyoti. So it is hinted here, it is indicated here that when the mind, when there is absence of competitive spirit, jealousy and so on, then the mind becomes pure. And when the mind becomes pure, then very easily one will be able to uninterruptedly be absorbed in meditation on the entirely concentrated spiritual form of Sri Narayana. Anything, either material or spiritual, is but an expansion of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 13.14, the omnipotent Lord has his transcendental eyes, heads, and other bodily parts distributed everywhere. Sarvatah Panipadam Tat Sarvatokshi Shiromukham. You can see, hear, touch, or manifest himself anywhere and everywhere, for he is present everywhere as a super soul of all infinitesimal souls, although he has his particular abode in the absolute world. Goloka eva nivasatya akhilatma bhutaha. The relative world is also his phenomenal representation, because it is nothing but an expansion of his transcendental energy. Although he is in his abode, his energy is distributed everywhere. Just as the sun is localized as well as expanded everywhere, since the rays of the sun, being non-different from the sun, are accepted as expansions of the sun disk. In the Vishnu Purana 1.22.56, it is stated that as fire expands its rays and heat from one place, similarly the Supreme Spirit, the Personality of Godhead, expands himself by his manifold energy everywhere and anywhere. The phenomenal manifestation of the gigantic universe, Virat Rupa, is only a part of his body. Less intelligent men cannot conceive of the transcendental, all-spiritual form of the Lord, but they are astounded by his different energies, just as the aborigines are struck with wonder by the manifestation of lightning, a gigantic mountain, or a hugely expanded banyan tree. The aborigines praised the strength of the tiger and the elephant because of their superior energy and strength. The asuras cannot recognize the existence of the Lord, although there are vivid descriptions of the Lord in the revealed scriptures. Although the Lord incarnates and exhibits his uncommon strength and energy, and although he is accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by learned scholars and saints like Vyasadeva, Narada, Sita, and Devala in the past, and by Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, as also by the Acharyas like Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, and Lord Sri Chaitanya in the modern age. This is a paraphrase of text by Yamunacharya. Quoted in Prabhupada's commentary to Bhagavad Gita also. They want to see with their own eyes at once. They want to see with their own eyes, that's one thing. But they want to see at once, on demand. Therefore, they can see the gigantic body of the Lord as Virat, which will answer their challenge. And since they are accustomed to paying homage to superior material strength like that of the tiger, elephant, and lightning, they can offer respect to the Virat Rupa. So therefore, there are those who think that the highest spiritual principle is nature herself. Lord Krishna, by the request of Arjuna, exhibited his Virat Rupa for the Asuras. A pure devotee of the Lord, being unaccustomed to looking into such a mundane, gigantic form of the Lord, requires special vision for the purpose. The Lord therefore favored Arjuna with special vision for looking into his Virat Rupa, which is described in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This Virat Rupa of the Lord was especially manifested not for the benefit of Arjuna, but for that unintelligent class of men who accept anyone and everyone as an incarnation of the Lord and so mislead the general mass of people. For them, the indication is that one should ask the chief incarnation to exhibit his Virat Rupa and thus be established as an incarnation. The Virat Rupa manifestation of the Lord is simultaneously a challenge to the atheist and a favor for the Asuras, who can think of the Lord as Virat and thus gradually cleanse the dirty things from their hearts in order to become qualified to actually see the transcendental form of the Lord in the near future. This is a favor of the all-merciful Lord to the atheists and the gross materialists. 25. अंडकोशे शरीरेऽस्मिन् सप्तावरण संयुते वैराजः पुरुषो योऽसौ भगवान् धारणाश्रयः. The gigantic universal form of the personality of Godhead within the body of the universal shell, which is covered by the sevenfold material elements, is the subject of the Virat conception. Madhvacharya quotes from Bhagavata Tantra. Andakosho Virat Prokta. It is this Brahmanda, which is referred to as Virat. Visheshena Prakashana. Vairajas Tad Gato Vishnu. And Vairaja refers to Lord Vishnu present inside it. Athava Sarvato Varaha. It is that Lord Vishnu is the supreme. The Brahmanda is called Virat because it specifically manifests various varieties. Sridhar Swami, Asya cha upalakshanatvena vishayatvam vastutastu Virat jiva niyanta bhagavaneva vishayaha ityaha. Now, when it is said that the universe is the subject of contemplation, that is indirect. Indirectly, it is the object of contemplation, but in reality, it is Virat, which here refers to the controller of all the conditioned souls, Bhagavan, who is the object of meditation. So there are 7 coverings. The covering of earth, water, fire, air, ether, Palsiko, Mahatattva. Saiva Vishesha Kutraha Kahava. Where is that material variety? In whom is it situated? Who is there? Andakoshe. Panchashat Koti Yojana Pramane Brahmande. In the Brahmanda, which measures 50 crore yojanas. Vairajaha. Hiranyagarbhasya Dehaha. This is the body of Hiranyagarbha. Bhagavan iti Hiranyagarbhantar Yami Garbhodashayi Dutiya Purushaha. Bhagavan refers to the second Purusha avatar, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, who is the super soul of Hiranyagarbha. Tat Pratimatvena Upasyamanaha Vairajaha api Bhagavad Shabdena Uchyate. And since this Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is residing constantly in that Hiranyagarbha's body, that is also referred to as Bhagavan. Simultaneously, the Lord has multifarious other forms, and all of them are identical with the original fountainhead form of the Lord Sri Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, it has been proven that the original transcendental and eternal form of the Lord is Sri Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead. But by his inconceivable internal potency, Atmamaya, he can expand himself by multifarious forms and incarnations simultaneously without being diminished in his full potency. He is complete, and although innumerable complete forms emanate from him, he is still complete without any loss. That is his spiritual or internal potency. In the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, manifested as Virat Rupa just to convince the less intelligent class of men who cannot conceive of the Lord as appearing just like a human being, that he factually has the potency of his claim to be the supreme absolute person without any rival or superior. Materialistic men can think, although very imperfectly, of the huge universal space containing innumerable planets as big as the sun. They can see only the circular sky overhead without any information that this universe, as well as many other hundreds of thousands of universes, are each covered by sevenfold material coverings of water, fire, air, sky, ego, noumena, and material nature. Just like a huge football, pumped and covered, floating on the water of the causal ocean, wherein the Lord is lying as the Mahavishnu. What is this? Football. The editors have added soccer ball to help the American readers understand this. All the universes in seed are emanating from the breathing of the Mahavishnu, who is but part of the partial expansion of the Lord. And all the universes presided over by the Brahmas vanish when the Mahavishnu withdraws his great breath. In this way, the material worlds are being created and vanish by the supreme will of the Lord. One can just imagine how ignorant is the poor, foolish materialist who simply on the allegations of a dying man puts forward an insignificant creature to become the Lord's rival incarnation. The Virat Rupa was particularly exhibited by the Lord just to give lessons to such foolish men so that they can accept a person as an incarnation of Godhead. Only if the person is able to exhibit such a Virat Rupa as Lord Krishna did. In other words, Krishna showed to Arjuna how he is in fact the super soul of the entire universe, that he can control every part of the universe. The materialistic person may concentrate his mind upon the Virat or gigantic form of the Lord in his own interest and as recommended by Shukadeva Goswami. But he must be on his guard not to be misled by pretenders who claim to be Lord Krishna, but are not able to act like him or exhibit the Virat Rupa, comprehending the whole of the universe. 26. Patalam etasya padamulam pathanti parshni prapadde rasatalam mahatalam vishvasrajot gulphau alatalam vai purushasya janghe. Persons who have realized it have studied that the planets known as Patala constitute the bottoms of the feet of the universal Lord, and the heels and the toes are the Rasatala planets. The ankles are the Mahatala planets, and his shanks constitute the Talatala planets. Pratima apekshaya angani, swarupa apekshaya tad jani, tad ashritani ja. In this entire system of meditation, there are different limbs that correspond to the external object of meditation. And each of these parts, they are sheltered by and they are born out of the Supreme Lord's own spiritual body's limbs. Sridhar Swami, Virat Deha, Tad Jiva, Tad Antaryaminam, Abhedam Arupya, Upasanam Kartavyam Ityashayenaha. So, when one executes this meditation, he should consider the universal body, the body of the universe, as well as the jiva inside it, or the jivas inside it, as well as the inner rulers of those jivas, all of them to be one should consider that all of them are to be one while meditating. It's a particular method of meditation. Impersonalism is only accepted as a sadhana, not as a sadhya, and that also only sometimes. Patalam, padamolam, padasya adhobham. Pathanti, grinantya, ityadi, pramana pradarshana. Persons who have realized it have studied. This indicates that there is scriptural evidence for this method of meditation. Outside the bodily existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the manifested cosmic existence has no reality. Everything and anything of the manifested world rests on Him, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.4. But that does not imply that everything and anything in the vision of a materialist is the Supreme Personality. The conception of the universal form of the Lord gives a chance to the materialist to think of the Supreme Lord, but the materialist must know for certain that his visualization of the world in the spirit of lording over it is not God realization. The materialistic view of exploitation of the material resources is occasioned by the illusion of the external energy of the Lord. And as such, if anyone wants to realize the supreme truth by conceiving of the universal form of the Lord, he must cultivate the service attitude. Unless the service attitude is revived, the conception of Virat realization will have very little effect on the seer. The transcendental Lord in any conception of his form is never a part of the material creation. That means whether it is a conception meant for those who are karmis, or for those who are jnanis, or for those who are yogis, or for those who are bhaktas. The conceptions are purer and higher stages of spiritual practice. So in bhakti, the conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pure. He keeps his identity as Supreme Spirit in all circumstances and is never affected by the three material qualities, for everything material is contaminated. The Lord always exists by his internal energy. The universe is divided into 14 planetary systems. 7 planetary systems called Bhur, Bhuvar, Swar, Mahar, Janas, Tapas, and Satya are upward planetary systems, one above the other. There are also 7 planetary systems downward, known as Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasadala, and Patala, gradually one below the others. In this verse, the description begins from the bottom because it is in the line of devotion that the Lord's bodily description should begin from his feet. Sukadeva Goswami is a recognized devotee of the Lord and is exactly correct in the description. Achyutanam Prabhu.
Prabhuji, that 50 million yojanas was the dimension of our universe.
Looks like.
And ours is the smallest one, means other universes are larger than this universal shell.
Yeah, we are studying our edition of Bhagavatam. So there's no problem with that. Okay, so I'm done with the portion. We'll stop with this unless if there's some other question. Panchakalpatarubhyasya, Kripasindhubhyo vacha, Patitanam pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.